years since the end of the Vietnam War, a lot of the intense sentiment held by both advocates and opponents has mellowed out and allowed a more, what you might say, four-way test type look at a lot of the issues and events surrounding the war. One of those was the secret operations we had in some of the countries neighboring Vietnam, and we're fortunate to have with us tonight someone with first-hand experience in one of those operations. Our own Joe Scheimer was a career Air Force officer and pilot, although he only flew things that had fixed wings as opposed to rotary wings. And he served as a forward air controller, or what they called FAC, F-A-C, in Vietnam, and later did the same job in Laos for Air America. I don't know if anybody knows what Air America is the CIA's airline, and he served in a unit called the Ravens. For those of you who don't know what a FAC does, these guys go out in little slow airplanes and look for targets, which they often found when they got fired at. And then they call on the fighters and direct them onto the targets. Despite what this job sounds like, Joe obviously came back in one piece and went on to finish a 24-year career, retiring as a colonel with 4,500 hours of flight time, 1,100 of them in the A-10 Warthog, a close air support fighter. Joe's going to tell us tonight about his first-hand experience in the secret war in Laos, as you can see on the screen. After his retirement, Joe flew the Intel shuttle for several years and then had a career as a financial planner for about 20 years. He and Marie have been married for... 42. How long, Joe? 42 years. They have 2 daughters and granddaughters. He's done a multitude of jobs in Rotary, including club president, and in 2010 he led the group study exchange team to the country of Colombia. Currently he's one of our district assistant governors, and is assistant governor for this club, and he's the chair of the grants subcommittee of the district foundation committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Raven 4-2 Joe Scheimer.
I joined Rotary after speaking at Covina Rotary Club about this very same topic, and they kept hounding Rancho Cordova to get me into the Rotary, and that's when I ended up joining. And as you can see, it's going to be 20-year anniversary here in March. And let's see, I'm also was the president when we won Club of the Year for the medium-sized club for Rancho Cordova, and got Jerry Foote, my table mate there and new member to our club here, to follow me as president, and he also won it for the Club of the Year. So, hey Jerry! So my bio is a Sac State graduate twice. I got a BA in government, and then followed when I was returned from Vietnam, stationed at Mather. I also got a master's in international affairs. Marie's a retired Folsom Cordova Unified School District. I met here when I returned from Vietnam. And we have, like I said, 2 daughters, and Jessica's sitting with us there. She's finishing up her 5th year as the physics teacher at Jesuit. There we are at the foundation dinner. And I spent 24 years in the military, 1,005 combat hours combined between Vietnam and Laos. 12 air medals, 2 distinguished flying crosses. I actually got 3, but some bureaucrat who'd never put his pink body in danger said I had 2 of them too close together, so he took away one of them. Yeah. Let's see, got experience in Vietnam, Laos, came back to Mather from Vietnam and Laos. Then we went to England, RAF Upper Hayford, to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I flew the A-10 Warthog. Twice to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, where Air Command and Staff College with my brother, who was also in the military, and then up to the Pentagon. 4 years on the blue suit side, off to War College, back at Maxwell, and then back to the Pentagon and the civilian side, working for the Secretary of the Air Force, which turned out to be anathema for a military officer. I was a spy. So that didn't work out. So a little refresher about the Vietnam conflict is, when I'm doing these slides, I realize, my word, it's 45 years since these pictures were taken of me over there. Hard to believe. Started in November 1st, 1965. We had the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which never happened. LBJ used that as an excuse. Supposedly the North Vietnamese torpedo boats that attacked the USS Maddox. But Admiral Stockdale, who was imprisoned in Hanoi Hilton for 8 years, was on that ship and said it was never attacked. But that was LBJ's reason to escalate the bombing and later to insert troops into Vietnam. It was also in 1965 that the secret war started in Laos. Laos was a neutral country after the 1954 Geneva Accords. But that's where the North Vietnamese took their supply route down through Laos and into southern Vietnam. So there was a need to interdict those supply lines, and that's what we did. So Kissinger and Nixon both swore before Congress that we didn't have any military in Laos. Well, there were at least 200 of us there over the 10 years of the war. Yeah, we didn't carry any military IDs. Actually worked for the ambassador, but we did the same job we were doing in Laos, or in Vietnam, as foreign air controllers. And I don't know if this pointer is going to work, but oh, there we go. New. All right, so Kon Tum and Pleiku. Pleiku is where I was in Vietnam, and I moved a whole 150 miles away across Cambodia to Pak Se, Laos, in the southern part of Laos, and that's where I lived and flew for the Ravens. The CIA recruited the Laotians, especially the Hmong, the mountain people, led by General Vang Pao. And I know a lot of you probably have heard of Vang Pao because he was from this area. He was actually in Orange County. There's a lot of Hmong in this area, and especially Fresno. And the recruitment was for experienced combat facts. So after 6 months as a combat fac in Vietnam, you could volunteer for this mission. You didn't know where it was, though. The ROE in Southeast Asia was such that rules and regulations that if you flew below 1,500 feet and got a bullet hole in the airplane, you were in danger of losing your wings. That's how badly it was micromanaged. And I'm sorry to say the same damn thing is happening against ISIS now. You almost have to have a general looking down the borescope of the A-10s before they will give you authority to employ. And after that hospital of the Doctors Without Borders was bombed and strafed by the AC-130, you can bet it's even going to be worse. So our program was called Project Steve Canyon, or Project 404. 404 was just our mailbox, but that's the two names we had. And we flew some old beat up O-1 bird dogs and T-28s left over from the Korean War. Our call sign was Raven. And of course our motto, because of that, was nevermore. We have a 4015C, or whatever that's called, nonprofit. It's called the Edgar Allan Poe Literary Society. The call signs extended from the 20s up north to the 40s in the south, and I was Raven 42 in the southern portion there. There's about 205 of us over the 10 years of the war. In the film you'll see that says there are 196, but that film was taken 20 years ago, and we found a few more that belong. Every year in October we have our reunion in San Antonio, Texas, and there were 31 of us attended this year. And that's the steely-eyed killers, much aged. We used to do carrier landings and all kinds of wild stuff. Marie went to one of them when we had a reunion in Myrtle Beach. She's never been to another one. Let's see, and you're going to see some footage from the Oshkosh fly-in. Oshkosh is where they have the Experimental Aircraft Association headquartered, and every year they have a fly-in, an experimental aircraft fly-in there. In 1996, which, my word, that was 20 years ago now, we had a fly-in that was a tribute to the Vietnam veterans. And I flew a restored O-1F bird dog that had been found at Gunter Air Force Base, restored up at Carson City, Nevada, and I flew that to Oshkosh and flew in the air show. Speed Vision taped interviews between me and another guy that you'll see here in that, that was produced, and it had commercials in it. The version I have doesn't have the commercials, so you'll see it. It'll keep saying, "And we're back again." So there's also some footage in there that I took myself. I flew around with a Super 8 8mm Canon movie camera, and took a lot of this footage that was used by varying programs that you'll see on TV, including suicide missions and a number of other things. They interspersed that in this footage I'll show you. So things to watch in the video, you'll see one twin otter flying, and you'll see these flares coming out the back of it. Well, what they are was, when the weather was so bad that I couldn't get fighters to come in, the Air America guys would load this twin otter with 50-gallon barrels of gasoline and naphtha soap, light a fuse, and kick them out the back of the airplane. You talk about ballsy, my word. And then kind of a thing to foresee, there's some footage there of me walking along this road, this trail, that's a CIA hospital along the banks of the Mekong. Well, that's where I ended up after a little foray on my motorcycle. So.
It took place over the steamy jungles of Southeast Asia. Next, two pilots that flew in the covert operation speak out.
Flying, if you were good, it was the most thrilling thing you ever did.
Then you started hearing about this secret war where you really got to fly, you really got to fight, you could constantly see the enemy, and there were no restrictions, and that's about all they tell you about it.
Yeah, this shouldn't have been secret for so long.
Sport Flying is back, uncovering a secret that has long been overdue. Vietnam. Almost 3 decades later, the name of one of the most controversial wars in history still conjures up images of destruction and horror. What Americans didn't know was another battle, known as the Other Theater, was also raging on, where identities were erased.
When we entered the program, they stripped us of all military ID, clothing, and all. The embassy gave us a embassy card. We were given a Laotian driver's license and told to tell anybody if we were captured that we were forest rangers out looking for forest fires.
Obsolete propeller airplanes were flown through enemy territory, and skills were stretched to their limit.
It was fantastic fun, and it was hazardous, and if you survived it, you knew that you could fly anything, anywhere, and that nobody was a better pilot than you were.
It had all the elements of an Oliver Stone movie, but it was reality. It was the Steve Canyon program. And this elite group of renegades with nicknames to match in-your-face attitudes was known as the Ravens.
Most of the guys, when they heard about Steve Canyon program, was this mysterious thing when you went through your FAC in-country briefing. And it was like, if you're here 6 months, you want to do something dangerous, give us a call, and, we'll see if you're good enough.
But I was in Vietnam fighting the war at Pleiku, Vietnam, in the O-2 aircraft as a forward air controller. We became very dissatisfied with all the rules and regulations and constraints. We started hearing about this other war where you got to see the enemy and just do as much as you want, saw as much action as you want, and it was very rewarding. So I volunteered for it, not knowing much more than that.
In my case, they had another program similar to the Ravens, but it was more plush and more luxurious. And it was living in Bangkok and flying with the Thai border police down on the Malay border.
For die-hard pilots, the Ravens Ravens made an offer that couldn't be refused.
But if you go and do this job, you got all the airplanes you want, and you can do anything. So I'll tell you.
Raven positions were at a premium, only becoming available when someone went home or was killed. Ironically, there was a waiting list to fight in a war that didn't exist. In a breathtaking land shrouded in mystery. Officially, Laos was a neutral country. Unofficially, it had become a hotbed of CIA-funded warfare.
Our job was to support roughly 40,000 special guerrilla troops and to destroy supplies going to Vietnam and tie up at various times as many as 10 North Vietnamese divisions and their auxiliaries. And we did this with a few guys and some old, very cheap airplanes.
Those old, cheap airplanes included, among others, the O-1 Bird Dog and the T-28s.
The T-28 pilots were just amazing. Now, of course, they had thousands of hours of combat time, but, I mean, you know, one of the toughest targets to hit is on a ridge top, hitting parallel to it, or at cross angles to it, and by damn, you know, if you ask those guys to do that, if that was the only run-in heading you could do it, I've had them do it.
Because of authorization restrictions, a Raven never flew alone.
In clearing authority, he had to ostensibly be through a native, and that's why we carried the backseater. But he also came in handy with communications with the ground troops now and then. The one time when I actually bombed a village, they had built up such a huge ammunition storage underneath one part of the village that my backseater was in constant communication with the tribal chief to make sure that we had the right section of the town identified, and we actually blew up a section of the town.
Slow and slow over enemy territory. That was the unspoken anthem for the Forward Air Controllers, or FACs, clearly making them easy targets as they tracked down North Vietnamese activity. It's not surprising the backseater's favorite saying soon became,
Raven, we go home now?
when sport flying returns, the constant dangers of being a Raven. Plus, find out what object was used as a bartering tool for downed Raven pilots. And an actual O-1 Bird Dog that flew in the Raven's missions has undergone a major restoration.
This is really a fun airplane to fly. I'm flying both the O-2s and T-28s now, and but this is the funnest thing to fly.
Sport Flying will be back in a minute. Sport Flying is back with more on the everyday perils of being a Raven.
In the briefing in the morning, they would either have some coordinates for you to look at or an actual strike coordinates they wanted you to hit. Maybe a ground team found a supply storage or an enemy site, and you were told to do that. Smoke to mark the target. If that ran out, then you had smoke grenades or something to mark with, or just use a geographic coordinate on the ground. My expertise was finding trucks and POL sites and stuff like that. And, in the entire time I was there, I only took one bullet hole in the airplane. So I was quite fortunate. A lot of the other guys had a lot more activity.
I was hit on 111 different flights.
We call him Magnet Ass.
I was forced to land due to battle damage 10 times. I had one crash that was an engine failure. Of those 10, I made it back to friendly lines and on friendly airstrip 7 times, and 3 times America picked me up and brought me back in.
The interesting part about the rescue of downed pilots and all, it was primarily Air America that did that. And for one example, one of my best buddies over there was Jim Lewis, sword in the book, a CIA ground pounder, battalion commander. And the day that they took back Pak Son, I landed on the dirt road outside of Pak Son to tour the town with Jim. And immediately after I landed, here comes an Air America helicopter, lands. Trouble with Raven? That's how quick they were to respond. They're just great.
And if Air America or a fellow Raven wasn't around,
We carried a gold bracelet that ostensibly was used as a barter bracelet to barter your way to freedom with. We knew they'd take a 2-cent bullet and shoot you and avoid you to walk out.
the enemy wasn't the only thing the Ravens had to overcome. Monsoon rains and the country's burning season also put the group's talents to the test.
You went by maps and time and heading a direction and the weather
get down low and pick your way around, but we learned, you know, the area by the back of our hands and knew where to go and where not to go.
Nowadays, the secret war in Laos has finally been made public. At a recent EAA convention, a few of the FACs were seen autographing a book depicting their lives as Raven.
This is going to really throw a lot of people off. They didn't know that was really right.
For the remaining Ravens, a reunion is held every October under the guise of the Edgar Allan Poe Literary Society.
Stories are fact. Time and distance from the event, as I found in most veterans gatherings, puts a little spin. You're never as scared as you really were at the time. You were always braver than you were at that moment. And there was at least 5 times as many enemies. But you can't exaggerate these stories.
Stories of hardcore pilots and their memories of the ultimate flight experience.
The flying was unbelievable because in the early days, everybody that was there was either ex-commando trained or were just super experienced.
And the planes they flew, including this original 01 Bird Dog, found after 25 years of grueling service and given a much-needed restoration.
And this is an F model with a constant speed prop, an 01F Bird Dog. And this one is with constant speed prop a lot faster than the D. They had D's and G's that I flew with constant speed. Fixed pitch prop only did about 92, 95 miles an hour. This one does about 125 to 130 miles an hour. This is really a fun airplane to fly. I'm flying both the O2s and T-28s now, and but this is the funnest thing to fly.
A memento of a painful past, brought back for a much happier future, and a long overdue tribute.
This is the actual flyby in Oshkosh.
With more about the Ravens, and a time in their lives they'll never forget.
You got a lot of patriotic, very concerned people that went over there with the purpose that we thought we were going over to win the war, and we were doing what we could to win it.
Almost 30 years after Vietnam, the question has to be asked, could it happen again? Perhaps the answer lies between the haunting words of Edgar Allan Poe. Then this heavenly bird, beguiling my fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of a countenance at war. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure though craven. Ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Hope the raven, nevermore.
That's the CIA hospital. So there's a story behind that motorcycle, but you can talk to me later about it. Anyways, what ended up on my crashing and ended up in the CIA hospital and coming home early. Supposed to go to R&R to Australia and then serve a second tour, but I think it led to me living through it. And there's my car, which is being repaired right now, and I haven't had it for 4 weeks already. So some more sources. I don't know if you saw the books back in the back there. There's a lot of magazines and several books. Chris Robertson wrote the book The Ravens. He's also the one that wrote Air America that Mel Gibson, they made a movie out of. Mel Gibson starred in. A lot of our group didn't like the way that came out as a comedy, so they never made a movie about us. There went our brief time of fame. Recently, AB Assembly Bill 78 was passed in California that when they teach about the Vietnam War, they also have to teach about the secret war in Laos. In the time of remembrance there at that blog, you can blog that or Google that, and you'll come up with the interviews of 6 of us Ravens and a couple of Laotians that have been made into documentaries that the schools are to use when they're teaching about Laos and the secret war. And that's it. One thing I could mention, in the video there I mentioned Jim Lewis. So a lot of you think that we just use the Laotians over there and Americans, but Jim was a battalion commander of a battalion of Thais. The Thais were fighting in that war also.